Time. It is 2:30. It is time to discuss the People of the Dragon, the Aiel. There we go. Okay, so I am Jennifer Lang. I am the director of High Fantasy here at DragonCon. You may know me from some other Wheel of Time thingies. I run JordanCon. Oh, you guys used to go. I run JordanCon. I am a character in A Memory of Light. I did some beta reading for the last 3 books. I've done a lot of Wheel of Time stuff. So I will try to make up some good stuff for you guys today. Hopefully I remember a lot about the Aiel. And then to my left we have...
Hello, I am Marisa Wolf. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. I started reading Wheel of Time in middle school, and finished when we all did. Excited to be here.
I'm Sarah Nakamura. I am obviously a really big Wheel of Time fan. I was a director at JordanCon for 7 years for registration, and I loved it. And I am the story consultant on the Wheel of Time TV show.
I'm Christina Goodman. I am a Brandon Sanderson beta reader and mental health subject matter expert for him, and I go on panels because Jen asks.
My name is Anthony Liggins. I am a co-host of the Fandom Hybrid podcast. Woohoo! I was also the director of media track at the Monsterama Con. And I'm an unpublished author. I am not a beta reader. I am not a consultant on a TV show. But this is my 24th year at DragonCon. I used to go to the Wheel of Time track all the time, and then it disappeared. And
Wasn't my idea.
I know. And then I discovered JordanCon, and I went to my first JordanCon this year. And it was so much fun. I'm gonna go every year from now on. So.
Okay. All right. So, real quick overview of the Aiel. They are your desert nomad society. Robert Jordan based them on a couple of mythological and historical groups. Historically, they are based on the Apache, Zulu, and Bedouin cultures. So he mixed together a lot of typical, nomadic cultures. And then their mythological roots, the 12 tribes of Israel and the Freemasons are the biggest influences on the Aiel. Especially a lot of the warrior societies are very much patterned off of Freemason societies. The Aiel society is structured into clans and septs, which is how Gaelic Ireland was organized. And so the wars between the clans and the septs, that is the little mini wars between the Irish up until they were colonized. So there's just some rough things about the Aiel. So I always like to start a panel like this with who is your favorite character and why. So Marisa, who is your favorite Aiel character?
Avienda.
Okay.
I love the answer.
And why Avienda?
Step 1, she's badass. Step 2, her confusion with the Wetlanders always made me laugh out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Step 3, she is in one of my all-time favorite scenes in Wheel of Time when she goes through the rings and sees the history.
Right. Sarah?
Ruark is my favorite Aiel. One, because he's a zaddy. Big time. But truly, I love the juxtaposition between Ruark and Lan and their relationship with Rand. Rand is in a stage where he's needing some major growing up, and I think Ruark is an excellent example for Rand, especially when it comes to being a leader that one can follow instead of a leader that someone needs to down into the sand. Takes them a while though.
Yes.
Well, since you already stole Avienda for me.
I love you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to pick Bayonet Giad because they are kind of a unit. And they're a delight whenever they come on and start annoying.
Well, Sarah stole Ruark. So.
We're thieves on this.
Yes, we are.
I'm gonna go with.
We can share. That's what they do.
Great point. All of the characters in the show got shared.
Sorry.
Okay. We'll talk later. So we have
Hey, this is not a late night.
I'm sorry, my bad. Cerelia.
Yes.
Because most fans that I know don't like Catswing, for obvious reasons. I like Catswing, and Cerelia is like the upgraded version of Catswing,
Okay.
and I like her a lot.
Yeah, I do like when Cirilla and Catswing meet for the first time and they just kind of like size each other up and they're like, we're gonna be friends. Because you're like, oh, what if, you know, they're gonna hate each other because they both are, you know, the same person. Like, yeah, we're the same. We're gonna vibe. And I really enjoy that about those two. Okay. All right, so let's talk about Avienda first. So Avienda is one of Rand's 3 women. When you have the maiden, mother, and crone archetype, she is the maiden because she is the maiden. She is Fardair's maid. Yeah. And so she is the warrior. She has to put aside her warrior. She has to learn how to fight in a different way. Her weapons become different. And she's just a fun person to dive into. So, Christina, you said that she was one of your favorites. You want to tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Avienda?
Yeah, I feel like she is, I mean, all of the women are good foils for Rand, but she kind of has more of a direct kind of feel to how she and Rand, because they all kind of teach him, but he kind of actually listens to her more than the other ones. And she's able to change as a character over the arc of the series a lot, in some ways more than some of the other characters, because she's experimenting with all these new cultures and these new spaces that she's in, and figuring out how she fits as a wise woman, a former maiden, but is she Aes Sedai, is she this? And I really love that part of her character where she's having to figure out who she is in the middle of the whole universe changing around her.
I always love that the final test to see if you are a wise one is how much nonsense you're going to put up with before you finally say, okay, I'm your equal. You can't do this to me anymore. I am now your equal. And Avienda, that final realization that she's like, she doesn't have to put up with this anymore. It's just such a, like, it's one of my favorite moments for her. And how about, Anthony?
I didn't pick her as one of my favorites, but she is a favorite. She has probably the most character development of any character in the story, as opposed to Perrin, who I feel like never changes. Like, he's the same from beginning to
Perrin
end.
peaks kind of early in the series.
Yeah. But Avienda goes through she has so many different stages of development in her character that I'm always amazed at how well he wrote that, her character arc.
Well, and I think it comes to her adaptability that we see, and perhaps is the training as a maiden that made her so adaptable to these new environments and cultures, as you were saying, which is really fascinating. But then the curiosity was something that I didn't necessarily expect. Whenever I read for the first few times, I always thought the Aiel, they were just warriors and that was it, and that's their whole life was survival. But the fact that she was so curious and she wanted to understand things is one of my favorite aspects of her character.
I also think that she's a really good foil for Elaine. The two of them together with their sister relationship and how they grow really close with each other. I really enjoy seeing that growth. Marissa, do you have any? What do you think?
I also really like seeing her early on with, I always called her Eshwin, sorry, Egwene, Eshwin Ano. So I loved that early relationship too, and then seeing it like even further develop with Elaine, and then Egwene and Elaine. Like I loved so many of the female friendships in real time, and Avienda was often at the center of them.
Yeah. She's like you said, she's very adaptable, and that adaptability leads her to make some really great cross-cultural friendships.
Yeah, she's a touchstone. So when people are spitting out, she always feels like she's the one that can kind of level set and say, either shake Elaine or, I mean, and even with Egwene, as she was learning JD till she was someone that was a patient, but also gave Egwene shakes that was necessary. So having a friend willing to do that is, I mean, once you find somebody like that in your life, you gotta hang on to them. So both Elaine and Egwene are lucky.
Although poor Bear, because when she spun out, nobody was there.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh no, I slept with hands. I have to go. And no one was there for her to talk to her.
I have to run.
Yeah, everybody was magic. Here we go. Yeah.
Okay, any other thoughts on all the ending you want to talk about? Okay, all right, so Ruark was another one you guys were all in on. Okay, so Sarah, tell us about Ruark.
Well, I think Ruark is the archetypal sort of ideal, well, if that's even a thing, male, but he is the representative, and also the one that went over the Dragon Ball to find Rand, and I think that responsibility in and of itself speaks to the type of leader that he is and was, and so and just his steadiness is something that whenever personally I was going through a tough time as a kid or whatever, he was always a character that I would flip to because I always found him so steady and reassuring, even in the midst of chaos. So when Nynaeve and Egwene and Elaine were taken by the bandits on the side of the river, and he was there. It was just, he was so chill after they killed a bunch of Murdral and people were still twitching on the ground, and so I found that character very soothing in the chaos of a lot of the other, no offense guys, but in the midst of a lot of the other chaos of the men in this series. He just came in and did what needed to be done and wasn't blowing holes in walls and was just doing his thing. So that's one of the reasons I love it.
Yeah, no, he's a really great mentor figure. You know, we all watched the Dune movies that came out the last couple of years, and he's the Stilgar, right? Like, you know, I'm pretty sure Robert Jordan read Dune, like, you know, pretty sure he read that, and so I think there's definitely like an intentional parallel between those two characters. Okay, any other thoughts on Ruark you guys have?
He was like Stilgar, but without all the you know, he was Karakan. He didn't do that. I was gonna pick him as my favorite, but it is the steadfastness, the always presence, those moments where he would actually challenge Rand, you know, and like the time when Rand went off without, he's like, you can't keep running off without anyone with you. And Rand's like, okay, I'm cool, I'll make sure I have someone. So he's always been like, he went from, Lan was like a father figure, and then now he has Ruark. And, you know, we're not gonna talk about the end because that's very sad. But, yeah, we're not gonna talk about it yet, hopefully. But Ruark is that character that you just can always rely on, that Rand always relied on, that he was always gonna be there no matter what. He was his protector, he was his confidant, he was his father. It was a lot. And it was someone that Rand needed. And I can't really remember what was going on in my life, but I think I really, you know, I lost my father in '95, and I think I read these books like the early 2000s, and it really hit home to me to need someone like that or have someone like that in your life.
Yeah, I think Ruark makes a great surrogate dad for a lot of people. Barrelane really needed a surrogate dad, and she connects with Ruark, you know, not the way she initially intended, but in a way that I think benefited her more than what she was originally intending. Yeah, and it's always so fun to watch how Barrelane, like, I don't think we ever have any point of view chapters from Barrelane. If we do, it's not very many. Like with Barrelane is always seen from the outside, and because she's pretty hot, everyone's like very like judgy of her. But when you look at what she's actually doing and who she's targeting and how she's doing it, like she's very intentional about what she does. And her relationship with Ruark is better than what she would have gotten if she had just hooked up with him. Yeah.
Yeah, she was, I don't wanna say a better person because I stand Verlaine big time and all of her accomplishments and what she did what she needed to for people, but, yeah, that she, or that Roark made such an impact on her that he was in a safe space for her. And so, whenever you saw the other characters reacting to her, reacting to him, and everyone just being confused, you start to pick that apart a little bit more, and you realize that he's providing this place of safety, and that you don't need to do all of that. I will help you. I will advise you, or I'll do whatever. And that was really a really cool thing.
Yeah, like you said about Amanda, Ruark plays this kind of steadying influence for several people. Like, he could have absolutely been like, you know what, my entire world is not going to be turned upside down because some Lander is our core camp or whatever. Like, we're not doing that. Instead, he was like, absolutely, he was like #1 supporter. He was steady. The world was literally blowing up around him several times, and he was still, like, he was stayed on target.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty impressive.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think it's interesting the comparison of Ruark to Lan, because in a lot of ways, if you think about it, Lan was less reliable than Ruark, because of
It's the Death Wish.
the Death Wish. Yeah, there's that. So he had, even though Lan comes across as like stalwart and faithful, and yes, all of those things, but he wouldn't make a good dad figure, really. And I think that having Ruark step into that role and be more of a, and also interact more with people. I mean, because Lan is very stoic, so the fact that Ruark actually had conversations with people, it made his role feel different and also fit what we thought Lan would be, but couldn't be.
Well, Ruark is just a more emotionally healthy male role model.
Yes.
And Rand has precious few of those in his life. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the comparisons between Lan and Ruark that I've kind of seen is that Ruark is kind of like that dad whose kids have grown up and are now out of the house. So he has that kind of like I taught all kids well. They're doing what they're supposed to do, and he needs advice. I've been through it all. I've seen it all, and that's probably what brought him up to be the clan chief. Whereas Lan, because he's always a warder, the way we see him always as a warder, it's almost like a dad who's still got the young kids that's like, I'm still trying to keep Moraine in just enough danger so that way she can use the power. I'm trying to keep Nadine in just enough danger so that she's.
That's too much danger, Nadine. That's too much.
Back off.
Back off, don't
Okay, a little bit more.
No, I think it's just different stages of life that they're in.
I like those points. I really do. My background is in mental health, and the issue with Lan is he has a lot of unresolved trauma that he hasn't dealt with, and that makes it very difficult for him to be emotionally available. So it comes off as stoicism, but he's just not emotionally available. Like, he'd rather teach you how to fight than to have a conversation with you, as opposed to Ruark, who would actually want to talk to you about the things you're doing and, think about the consequences, whereas Lan does not do that.
Well, Ruark has, 2 wives that he keeps very happy. You gotta talk about your feelings. Double the women.
Yeah. Yeah, the ideal is a polyamorous culture it's got certain controls and rules based on it. It's not just like, hey, like how many people can we put into our poly pool this week? I've seen some things. It's DragonCon. We've seen some things. But yeah, so the polyamory and the ideal is really interesting because they're the only polyamorous culture we see in the Wheel of Time, and it's very shocking to the other cultures. But they're just like, no, this is just how you do things. Yeah. Does anybody have thoughts on? Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
But maybe not specifically about polyamory, but in general, the fact of what you were saying about how we see the ideal from outside and the reactions of all of these other cultures to them, but we also see from inside their points of view as well, and kind of the juxtaposition, the difference between how Elaine is shocked by the polyamory situation with Sherry, and how Avienda is like, oh, this is just normal. You and I have to be bonded in order for this to work with and
We're both in love with the same guy. Don't worry, I've got a procedure for
right,
that.
right. There are ways
This
to
is
do
how we
this.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're overreacting by being weirded out by this. Why this is normal? This is the way it should be. So,
Except that Avienda is in a panic for, like, I don't know, however many
Right.
books about that as well, without considering, wait, just, maybe we can talk about this. She doesn't have to kill me because I slept with her first. Let me can talk about it. So that's always something I found really interesting about Avienda, is that her sense of honor, and maybe that's part of the IL culture, is we have to talk about this first, the rules first, and that didn't happen, and she states her claim first, and so all of that. But I always found that to be really funny from Avienda's point of view, that she would assume death first, talk later. It didn't, and so I'm glad that obviously they worked it out. But
I think part of that is Avienda's reacting to, well, she knows Rand and Elaine are from monogamous cultures, and so they're like, well, they're not going to be into this. And also, her last conversation with Elaine was, "Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on him for you, and make sure nothing happens." And she's like, "Oh crap, I'm the thing that happened." So she feels like she betrayed a trust in Elaine. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Well, yeah, I noticed though that it was only one male and two women. It wasn't another way. Now that could be towards society. I suspect that more men get killed, and you wonder about that aspect of it. I also look at the IL and wonder, because one of the things throughout this, and you find in other type series, is how do you control the people that have power, right? And with IL they do it that you're not warriors, you're not in the fight, But every society has these different rules about how do we control the people that have power. And at this time, of course, all the people that have power are women. But it is this idea of they got this extra power. We got to do something so that they're not in, that they don't, how do we limit the abuse of it?
No, I think you're on the right track with the first part of what you said, where as a warrior society where it's mostly men who are doing the fighting, there's probably not enough men to go around. But then you also look at the people we see in polyamorous relationships in the IEL are high status people. And so these are high status men, and they are married to wise ones and roof mistresses. And like most of them is like, okay, one wife is a roof mistress, the other's a wise one, and like that's how they maintain the support of their sept or their clan. Is we've got the three people who need to be running this. The clan chief is we're working together as a unit, as a family unit, and I think that's part of where this comes from. I don't know if there's any other polyamorous relationships in the IEL that don't reflect this power structure, though. Does anybody remember anything?
Levine and
Yeah. But I think, what's his face? What's the dude there? Yeah. I think he has Gaul could be as a potential clan chief. Yeah. So I could see him like, oh hey, like you've got the two wives now. Looks like you're on the promotion track.
Which comes first?
Pulling either of them out of being weak would be hilarious. Yeah.
Great time.
Any other things we want to say about polyamory in Wheel of Time?
Just that it's great.
I tend to stay out of those discussions. Thank you.
All right, the other hand? Yeah, go ahead.
I just thought it was a really interesting, commentary on polyamory, about the society that's really focused on honor, a society that can maintain polyamory well, especially in the context of novel women, we've all learned a lot about polyamory since then, but the fact that for polyamory to exist, there's a lot of honor and truth that has to happen, and so the fact that that was, integral to the ideal of society, I thought was really interesting, and fruitful to tell.
Thank you. You said it because that was my thought as you guys were talking, was it's probably because of the value they place in duty, honor, and loyalty is the reason why it works, and honesty,
Yeah.
and the reason why it works so well.
I heard a rumor, and it's very much rumor, that I did not seek any further information about, but that they might allow Elaine and Avienda to have more of a relationship themselves too, and I think that would be a really interesting update of that behavioral structure.
What's Sarah's face look like right
I
now?
know, I
That's
don't know.
that's a WAPO.
Has everybody heard the Robert Jordan polyamory story from when he was younger? Oh, okay. So, one of the reasons why Robert Jordan wrote polygamous relationships, polyamory relationships, is because he experienced one in his younger years when he was a young man. Apparently, he had two best friends who both wanted to go out with him, and they just said, "Hey, we're both starting to date you now." And they would arrange everything. Like they would say, "Hey, like it's my friend's birthday is next week. This is the date you're going to take her on. This is what she wants for her birthday. It's my turn this weekend. So yeah." And he's like, "I did my very best not to mess this up ever. Like I just kind of let it happen." And I'm like, but that's also the kind of guy Robert Jordan was, that he would have two women at the same time who were totally cool with it. At least that's his telling of it.
Fair point.
Notice he's not married. He wasn't married to either of those. So.
And he found his ideal.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. So, are there any other ideal characters we want to talk about?
You want to talk about the history of them?
I mean, if we're done talking about characters, we're going to go into that. Oh, yeah.
The ones that get sent north, like the Darklands or whatever.
Yes. Okay. So the ideal men who discover they can channel, they go north to the Blight to fight the Dark One, but they end up going to this village instead, where they get turned to the Shadow, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. Yeah, and so there's a village of evil, ideal men who can channel, hidden in the Blight. So that's cool.
Why were their teeth or am I hallucinating?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
That image of the
To make it
sharp pointy,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
jumping out and like, oh my god.
I love that.
This is what I love that for us.
Isn't there a difference between who had their teeth filed and who didn't, if they went willingly, one of them had their teeth filed, or if they were turned?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't remember.
Tigraine
Oh.
or Shayu?
Yeah.
Can we talk about her?
Okay, so this ties in with one of my other notes here about the noble savage tropes, and where Robert Jordan plays with and then also subverts those tropes. So Tigraine is almost like a straight up, like, I've gone to join the wilderness and the indigenous group, and I'm going to learn their ways and be awesome at it, except she's kind of not. Yeah. So let's talk about Tigraine.
Well, I mean, do you have
Okay.
thoughts? Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no, I don't. I think it's a fascinating thing that she goes because someone has a prophecy and tells her, you have to go or the world is doomed. And she does, like, without hesitation. But I really wanted to bring her up because I didn't know if we were going to talk about the show. And I thought seeing her in the show, pregnant and totally raking those guys was amazing. And it's exactly how how I imagined her to be.
That's exactly it. That was one of the scenes in the show where like I didn't blink the whole time, right? Like I was just like, yes, this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to see. This is what I hoped is true. It was beautiful. It was so beautifully done.
Yeah, it's a really amazing scene, and I loved seeing it, but it's not book accurate. Sure. Yeah, like book, and it is totally fine that the book and show are different. I am not one of those people. Book Tigraine is not very good at being ideal, but she barely makes it by the skin of her teeth. Yeah, she's doing her best. She's trying so hard. And that's one of the reasons why I consider it a subversion of the noble savage trope, because she goes to do a dances with wolves basically, but instead of being like the most awesome person, Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's not good at it, but she does it because she has to. And like I just kind of like it. I like that kind of like strength of will that she has.
Yeah, I mean, she was a mother and she left behind a 4-year-old, which is, or 2-year-old, something, but that's awful. And so the idea that she would do that, I don't think it was simple for her, but the fact that she did it, and then the IEL see her sort of crawling along in the desert, in the freehold land, and they're like, well, she seems interesting, after almost allowing her to die. But yeah, I do think that she was a little bit OP in that Moldova, not gonna lie.
But
it was
also
awesome.
totally worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So worth it.
it's one of those things where I don't mind the show being different than it looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because they have to show us how good Margaret's Maya are.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
really
she is the first Barderas May you see in the show, so therefore she needs to make a good impression. So, and the show does that particularly well. Okay, yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting is the willingness of the IEO to teach the whole concept of Geneto to anyone who really does want to learn. And I think that with Ukraine, that's a good example of like, there's a pattern of like, if you're gonna come out here, you're gonna have to learn our ways. And you're gonna have to be started like a baby, learning, the truth, do all these things with honor. And I just think that it's a good example for the lessons that other people have, that we see in the story have to learn.
I love that with Egwene. That's one of my favorite parts of her story arc. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I always felt part of her story was talking about the president and wanting to escape him, which was
Yeah. We don't get a lot of detail on Tarangel, but he does not seem like a pretty decent guy. Yeah, I think there's an implication that he was definitely plotting to murder her. Yeah, so, good times. That's a healthy relationship, yes.
Do we know where the concept of duo is coming from? Is it based on any religion or mythology, or is that something Robert Jordan just came up with?
I know bits and pieces of it are from, and I can't remember which Native American tribe it was, but they had Counting Coup, which is your how you keep track of your honor, and there's certain acts that are more honorable than others. Like the most honorable thing that you can do is to touch an enemy that is armed while you are unarmed, and just like touch them. And you see that in IEL culture, where if somebody tag, you're it. Now you get to be my guy Shan for a year and a day. And so, some of that comes from the different indigenous cultures that he looked at when he was building his society. Okay, yeah.
Still be honorable?
Yeah, so she asked us to discuss Savannah, like the evil wise one. So yeah, she's fun.
She's power hungry. I don't want to call her
Decadent.
evil. I would say she's so power hungry in the beginning that there's a ruthlessness about it, and that's pretty epic. It's a fun thing to play with for sure.
Yes, but she also thinks she's better at it than she is.
Yeah.
Better at being ruthless, better at being sneaky, better at,
Yeah.
very delulu, exactly.
Well, I mean, by ideal standards, she's great at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, it's just not part of their culture. Yeah, Marissa?
It's that corrupting influence, right? So you see the beauty of the cross-cultural things with Avienda, and then you see some of the corrupting of the cross-cultural things with Savannah, because man, does she get real comfy in those Wetlander situations, and she just gets very decadent.
Yes.
I think more like where she really gets corrupted is more to me from decadence than ruthlessness, because I don't think she's like good at ruthless, but she's real good at getting some luxuries, and making herself as comfortable as she can.
I mean, ruthless when it came to partner hopping, because at first she was like, I need a chief in order to be a chief, essentially, and then the direction that she ends up
taking ultimately is, I am the chief. And so that was, that's, I mean, just very calculating. I found that really interesting.
Well, and it's interesting that the reaction of the Shaido to her claiming to be a chief isn't, no, women can't be chief. They're more like, it's not a good idea. It's definitely not a good idea. Yeah. Okay, anybody else want to comment on Savannah?
I feel like y'all want me to comment. The only thing I can say about her is it's like a person who thinks they're playing the game of houses, but they're not really playing the game of houses. Yeah, game of shacks. Yeah.
But yeah, like the Shaido are a really interesting plot thread because like they're like the naughty ideal, but you see that they have like their own definition of honor, that they they do hold with a lot of traditions, but they're a little bit more flexible on some of those things. So and then you just see like all the infighting between Savannah and Thurava and the other Shaido wise ones. It's very interesting.
I feel like they were sort of like Jordan's way of saying that you think the society is monolithic, and they're actually not. And I feel like that was really the only purpose of the Shaido.
They can't all be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, any other characters you want us to discuss, or you want to dig into the culture a little bit more? Yeah.
Women general, the Wetlander wannabe ideal.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, Christina, you and I were talking about that a little bit before the panel.
Okay, no, so we were talking about Egwene.
Okay.
That was fun.
Yeah, we did talk about Egwene, and I was also thinking about the Chapael.
The Chapael, yeah. That's right, because they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they seem like they dress like men, but
They
with
pick
their-
and choose.
Yeah, it was really,
Uh-huh.
it was a really fun
Yeah.
situation. But I think that they eventually develop skills. Because the ideal are like, the maidens especially, like, we cannot continue to watch you butcher this. It is just so, just the secondhand embarrassment was so real that eventually I think that some of the maidens gave them a hand. That's nice.
It was almost like our early cringe culture.
Yeah, so they feel very middle school.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting about them were most of them were noble women and didn't really. I don't think that they knew what their place was in this changing world. When again, the last battle is coming, all of the men were getting ready for war, and so what are we supposed to do? And I think that if I were in their shoes, that I might have also chosen to, maybe I might have done that and said, no, you know what, I'm not gonna sit here in my unreasonable dress. I want to do something. And so they saw the maidens as people of action, and they're doing something. And so it wasn't, I don't think, for a power grab or anything like that. Some of the older nobles were doing with Rand and trying to play for the throne, and Cardian especially, I think that they were like, I'm bored, not bored, maybe,
Right.
I don't know, they wanted to do something, and so I have a little respect for that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, in the sense that because they're noble and they are wealthy enough that they can attempt to play active. They have the time, they have the space, they have the luxury, and in order to do that. So, in some ways, I think Jordan actually does bring that out as a comparison to the True Rivers people, going, who are these, folk who think they're so good that they're going to be pretending that they're servants? So I thought that was a well-played societal dynamic, just because of the fact that they have and I think that they probably had, as most of them probably had good intentions and all of that, but also very, very privileged. So
Yeah.
So in that vein, then it's just they're completely out of touch.
Yeah.
And that was a fun thing to explore.
I think it was
Oh, no, go ahead, finish.
it was another place of like how these different cultures coming together influence people, right? So like, didn't Fail kind of adopt them, right? So like you get Fail who is from a place where she's allowed to play with knives, and that's okay. And then a lot of these other women were not, right? So like, what do you have to defend yourself with? Nothing. And so you see Fail and how successful she's been, and then you see the maidens, and you're like, hold up, can I for real do this? But they don't have the training, they don't have the background, but they do have the money. And I think that's actually pretty true to,
yeah, true to that's one of those that's kind of true to life.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I think of when I think of this particular moment in the series is the difference between culture appreciation and culture appropriation. And so what you see is like these are noble women who are appropriating Aiel culture, and that's why it's so cringy and embarrassing. And when the real Aiel take them under their wing and be like, look, let me teach you what this is really about, then they start to appreciate the culture and are less embarrassing. And that kind of stuff is, like you mentioned, middle school and like, you know, like dilettante noble women. Like those are the things that people who are very young and immature, or people who have a lot of free time on their hands, like will look for a culture to adopt that is not their own because they think it's going to make them more interesting. Yeah, and so that's kind of the dynamic you're seeing, but with a little bit more of like the apocalyptic, like, okay, I get to play with knives now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, world's ending, might as well have stuff.
Yeah. Okay, there was a hand over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
that it does seem like in my opinion, that it seems like they do kind of grow, like they start off just doing the fun stuff, and then realizing that it's actually work.
Yes.
Effort. So there is that growth experience.
Yeah. And then also with Carrie Ann and the Aiel, like this is the second time Carrie Ann has lost a war to the Aiel, and so it's kind of like, okay, like this culture clearly has something that we don't. Let's figure out what it is about it that makes them a superior culture. And yeah, honor, which Carrie Ann is not great at, not good at. Yeah. And so it's almost like a reverse colonialism. Like we have to like, okay, this other culture has come in and you know, dominated us, and so we're going to start aping the things that they're doing because we want to look like the more successful, high status culture. And normally, the reason why I call it reverse colonialism is because the Aiel are very indigenous coded, and the Carrie Ann is more of a European coded society. So I don't know, it's just different.
Isn't it closer to cultural appropriation? Didn't it kind of border on that?
Yeah. Like I think it's very much starts off as appropriation. And it's not until the real Bardaris May starts saying, no, that it turns into more of an appreciation. Like their understanding of Aiel culture is so surface level to begin with. They're like, oh, the women wear pants and they stab people. And yeah, that looks good. And then they kind of like, when they start getting into it, they're like, oh, okay, this is the real way it works. And they become better, you know. But they do start from a very cringy, embarrassing place. Yeah. Back of the room, yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I think one of the things that makes people, that make people find it attractive is that there's a quantification to like, if you hurt someone, you can set the price. Like, you can say, okay, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna have something where it's like, after I do X, Y, Z, then I'm done, I don't owe you anything anymore. And then that's where they try to translate that into their own morals and ideals for their own culture, which is where you get a lot of that myth.
Well, it's probably really refreshing in a culture that's so dominated by day is tomorrow, which is basically let's have a million petty grudges that we're spinning out over like, you know, several decades. Yeah. And like, how can I screw you over for something that happened 3 years ago? It is probably a very refreshing thing to look at when you are in a culture that is so that.
Yeah. It's like clean, just like from now on, I'm either gonna kill you or we're just gonna be friends again.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Karen's relationship with the IEL and the IEL culture is really interesting because, like y'all said, on one side, Fael and Shafael are arguing against him on every single occasion they can. And then on the other side, you have Gaul, who is just the biggest ride or die in the series. To the point that him just going to the dream world at the end of the series, like, never having gone there, like, just
Sure.
house.
Or we're facing the Forsaken?
Yeah.
I'm there.
I'm there.
Okay, all right, so I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the culture and the world building that go into the IEL. Is there anything you guys want to discuss about the culture and world building?
I mean, I mentioned it with Avienda at the very beginning, but when we find out the history of that, like, oh man, is that a good scene. I will go back and reread that every couple of years, if not more often, because it is so beautifully done. And then the function that story serves within the culture of, can you handle this? Can you handle understanding your background and your truth and the reality of our world and still uphold what we have become? Or are you just gonna break and go like raving into the desert? I love that, and that level of testing for your leaders. Man, do I wish we had something like that.
Yeah, like, can you handle the brutal truth about society? Yes, okay, cool, you can be a leader.
Yeah, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because what is one out of every three survive?
Yeah.
It's because once they learn the truth, they can't handle it or whatever. Can I assume everyone here has read the books? No? Raise your hand, no? Are you watching the show? I don't want to.
Oh, you're here for support.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the history, but it would be like a show spoiler, wouldn't it?
Are you okay? All right, then yeah.
Okay,
She's good.
so I was always fascinated, you know, when we saw the Tinkers on the show, and a wife who, you know, hadn't read the books, but I've talked about it before. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to tell her. And the Gen IEL, I want to talk about them for a second. It's interesting how, you know, they are the true servants, the true dedicated, and for them just to die off and disappear, I always thought, what does that say about the culture? Like, what does that say about being a truly dedicated person? That you are so tied to your ways, you're so true to your duty or honor or whatever, that you cannot change. And that was, I think, the lesson in, you know, first the Tinkerers, you know, the Tuathuan breaking off is, why are we doing this? They're gone. Like, why? What is the point? And then the others, like, why can't we not defend ourselves? You know, you have to change in order to survive, and the Gen IEL just didn't learn how to survive.
Yeah, I mean, even when they found a place to settle ultimately, they still couldn't dig in enough, because they ultimately, I think, were going to have to rely on the people around them, and that still wasn't enough, because I think it was hard for everybody involved for the Gen to be present, to be building their city, and then to also be relying on the warriors was just really confusing for them, and then ultimately you can't survive. It couldn't hack it in that environment, and so it was really that threefold land was the testing ground, and they failed, and that's sad. It's sad.
You have to survive it, but at what cost?
Yeah.
So, just quickly, Nakomi.
Yeah, there it is.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, right, Michael, you on this book, but there was something there about.
You mean Michael Livingston?
Michael Livingston.
Yeah.
Yeah, who is the artist?
Yeah. I was like, what is Michael Whelan know about this?
He should have done that.
Yeah, anyways.
But what did he say about, I can't remember, but is she a Jedi or is she?
I don't remember, and I've read this.
We didn't get a definitive answer though. Oh no, they were gone, or were they?
And that we kind of left that kind of, I think that was kind of
Yeah.
the Jen disappeared or did they kind of thing, and so it was like, now that it's been a while since I read it too, but I had that impression of weirdly Shadar Logoth and them living in Druidian, just like
Okay,
in the
yeah.
buildings, and I'm like, that's what it made me
Kinda
think
hiding,
about. Was
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, are they just like hiding in these buildings, and are they gonna pop out after the last battle or something and
Interesting.
reestablish? So that's interesting. I completely forgot about that. And now,
Yeah.
oh my
Okay.
god.
Okay. But she wasn't a clan of the Jedi according to the wiki.
Yeah, so she was the avatar, the creator to counter Shidar Haran, is what Lily is saying. So,
The Wheel of Time wiki says she was born to the Jedi. She's destined to provide a vessel of the Creator as part of the purpose, lore, and identity of the clan. So, yes, and we all got there. Yeah.
right.
So if you're determined, is she actually alive? I always thought of her more of a ghost. Or a force ghost?
Crossing the streams. I love
I
it.
thought she was like a Tellarunde.
That's what I thought. Projection.
Yeah, projection, like
Okay.
step in and out.
Okay, kind of like Brigida,
Kinda.
okay,
Yeah.
with more control
Wasn't
over it.
losing bits of her soul every time she stepped in and out of the world.
Because the Creator was in there.
Okay.
Actually just pulled up the links to both.
Amazing. But more
Technology is
relevant.
great. So she's basically a Sanderson.
Okay, Sanderson creation.
And he says, as many of you have guessed, her first is Jedi Eel. Yes, there's still around a few of them, and providing the vessel who is the counterpart of Shadar Haran.
Okay.
So, a real person, but.
Okay, filled with,
Yeah, a few of them.
We got there. We got there.
okay,
Can
right, go ahead.
Can you discuss where the IO going after the book? One of my, it wasn't just our members who saw a negative future. And the idea of them being police, but they cannot confront a whole society, does not seem that they can be very good police. And so my concern is that even if she changes the name, they'll, they know that that there's this future coming. So.
I will say one thing that I really hope happens, and it's like one of my saddest open-ended things. I really hope they go talk to the Tinkers and tell them about the song. That really like broke my heart that we never saw that on screen. But I do think there could be a really hopeful place for the IEL that isn't any of the terrible features they saw, if they are able to kind of make peace with the Tinkers beyond just we don't kill them when they come here, but we could actually like bring our cultures together in some kind of way.
Yeah, kind of reconcile these two things again. Yeah. Yeah,
I
Christina.
feel like so much of the story is dueling honors. So you have different honorable groups. So there's most of the Aiel are honorable. The Tinkers are also honorable in their own way, but they're juxtaposed against each other, and that tension between where your honor lies and how you live in the real world is not as easy as we're fighting the dark. So what you're talking about, what happens in the future, is made more complex because there's less of we're fighting the shadow here. Things are more vague, people's honors conflict, which happens through the stories as well, in the way that the different people try and work out what is honorable even within the Aiel. The ones who put the mark on them, not hearing? No, not the mark. This is quiet.
Oh, yeah,
The
the
headbands.
headbands.
Yeah, so they swear to be Rand's Kaishan, basically, right?
Yeah, like their society is right.
Yeah, society.
Yeah.
So they're trying to live in honor. Everybody around them thinks that they're not being honorable, but they are, and the other people are too. So it's that confused, like we're both on the same side, but we both have different priorities. that I think is one of the things that makes the book so good, the complexity about it.
And, sorry, I think a lot about the prophecy that we hear about, a remnant of a remnant shall survive. And so what I think about that as being is the ideal that we see in the books, as being the remnant of what survives. So that specific culture will have a small pocket of surviving Aiel. Their descendants or the people that are the Aiel that potentially are the police. It's like the Dashan Aiel. They're a version of Aiel, but it's evolving and it's changing. So whenever we talk about a remnant of a remnant, I think that maybe, and this is just my speculation, is that that way of life is what might be that part of the prophecy and that part of what's surviving.
Yeah, I had the same thought, because what's going to happen now that they have to stay in the wetlands, they have to adapt again, and they're going to assimilate into different cultures. There may be a few that hold on, and whatever that few that holds on to it, they're not going to be able to fight anybody. You know, they're not going to be able to stand against the Seanchan. They're just not. And, you know, when you think about what happens to indigenous cultures when they go into places where, you know, they traditionally aren't, they assimilate and their culture gets lost unless, you know, they still hold on to it. I thought about, it would be cool, we always talk about things could be avoided if we have one good conversation. And you would think that the leaders of the Aiel would sit down with the leaders of the Tuathawan and be like, hey, you know what? Yeah.
Here's the deal. I would
Right.
Yeah.
But there has been so much time, we're talking 3,000 years, there's so much time, so much distance. You know, the Tuathawan have already assimilated other people. They don't even look like Aiel anymore. So, right, so is
They've
there...
been adopting people into their culture.
Right,
So, yeah.
right. So how can you tell them that we are related, like we are the same? You can tell them the story, but what impact would it have?
What would happen if they went through Radion?
That's what I want.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to think about
One
that.
of the Tinkers go through Radion, what would happen?
They get to know about the song.
Okay. Right.
They could bribe them with the song. They'd be like, hey.
Right. Yes.
I always noticed a symbiosis almost between, or similarity between the Dakavale, the Seanchan, and the Siswayaman, because they are putting themselves into Rand's ownership. They become his property. They willingly become his property, and then you have the Seanchan across the sea who are actually proud of being the property of the blood. And so now you have these two completely opposite types of cultures adopting a similar type of slavery, and it's just
There's a distinction. I would say that Dakavali are slaves. They are enslaved by the Seanchan, and while that might be something that they are conditioned into, you know, enjoying. I think what this is they are serving Rand, and so I think that perhaps their honor precludes them from stepping away from that act of service, but it's still a choice. And so, at least with the Seanchan and that culture, the Dakavali, there are no choices. And
it's
so,
the beginning of the Dakavale. We don't see where that evolved from.
yeah,
Time.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like they could walk away. Like
there's a
they're...
loss of autonomy and sense of self. I mean, you see it just in everything that they do. I get
Well,
it.
and this is way, man, they choose how they're serving the dragon. Yeah, like they chose to enter into this kind of covenant, and then they choose how they're going to fulfill it.
And they haven't been conditioned to want to like it either, and want to do it. That's a big difference.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, all right, we've got about 1 minute left. All right, I know, we're having such a good time. All right, so final thoughts from our panelists. Marissa, what do you want to say before we go?
I am excited to continue to see the Aiel storyline play out on the TV show, since we will not get any more Outrider novels, or Outrigger novels, whatever they were. I'm real pumped to see the visualization of them. My Yahoo email address was for Grace Mai back in the day, so
Well, I can tell you that I spent a lot of time with IEL in the last year, so I'm excited for you guys to see that.
Okay, I seriously just got like
Same. That's all I'm gonna say is that I'm excited now too.
I'm excited to see them on the show. And also, the Freemen are not IEL, and the IEL are not Freemen, and neither are the Tusken Raiders. They aren't the IEL either. And if you read the Malorian and the Belgariad, neither are the Ogos. They're just saying.
Superficial similarities, but not the same. Yeah. Okay. All right. And so that if you enjoyed our panel, please rate us in the app. Please donate to the DragonCon charity, and look in the app to see where our lovely panelists will be again later. There is more Wheel of Time stuff this weekend. I just don't remember when or what. So it's all in the app. You'll figure it out. All right. We'll see you guys later.